my brother, Bryan Pollard, my man. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Zach, thank you, man. Appreciate you having me. It's an honor to be here.
Dude, such a blessing to finally reconnect. We really haven't spoken all that much in the last several years. I know God is doing great things in and throughout your life. I'm excited just to hear more about those things. We're going to be talking about discipline, self-control, things that really matter for us in a sense of holistic health and wellness today. For all the listeners and viewers, Bryan and I go way back to middle school days. Middle school and high school, Bryan was a phenomenal athlete. He's just an incredible person, someone who has just a passion and a charisma for life. But Bryan, bro, catch us up to speed. Catch me up to speed. What has life looked like for you the last couple of years? What are some highlights? What's God doing in through your life today?
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, before I get into it all, I just want to thank you again for having me on here. As you alluded to, we went to middle, high school together, college even, and it's just such a blessing to see what you are doing in your life and with your life and the impact that you're making. And I'm super proud of you, bro, and I've always looked up to you. So thanks
Right back
again
at you,
for
bro.
having me. Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Yeah, man, life's been quite a journey. It's been a blessing, man. I believe that things happen for you and not to you, and I believe that that's been kind of how life has been going for me. To kind of catch you up and the listeners, I went to Liberty University. I graduated from there. Took my talents to LA to follow a
Yes.
girl and with a dollar and a dream, and I spent 4 years out there. Wasn't some of my proudest time, but it taught me a lot. I learned a lot of lessons, and then found some roots in Austin, which not many people know, but I might actually be moving to Houston here pretty soon. So
Wow.
regardless, the roots are in Texas. It's
Yeah.
been great. It's been hot, and really just taken on this, authority of being a coach and
Yeah.
in the fitness world, and I love it. As you know, fitness has kind of always been the point in my life, and so it feels great to do it as an occupation now.
Man, dude, it's exciting to see. I've seen all of your work. I hear it from a lot of our friends that, you're in a sense mentees. And as you coach, a lot of your programming in this kind of space is all built around three pillars, right? Fitness, nutrition, and accountability. And I love the programs that you're building out. I wanted to ask up front because I want you to be able to push that resource up front, and I'll follow back up at the end. But is this something that people can come to you just in the Texas area, or is this like virtual training that people from all around the world, all of our listeners and viewers can actually access those resources from?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for letting me speak on this. So to answer your question, it is virtual. I do some in person, but for the most part, it is virtual. So it's something that everybody can enjoy and reap the benefits of all around the world, which I'm super grateful for. I felt like COVID kind of revolutionized the fitness industry to
Yeah.
allow for more of this online coaching space, and it works well for me, and it works well for a lot of my clients. While I do see the purpose and the benefit of in person, I think for the right person, the online space is great. So yes, it's for everyone. My business is called Top Academy. That's the Optimal Performance Academy. I have a fitness and I have a running program. Both are built off of the three pillars that you just mentioned: the fitness, the nutrition, and the accountability. I always tell people that are interested in my program, like, this is not revolutionary stuff.
Yeah.
It's very simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And
Mm.
simple doesn't mean easy, but I pride myself in giving everybody the tools and the resources and the accountability and the support that is needed to get you the results that you're looking for, even when times get hard.
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to be following up with you after this conversation because I'm going to be your next client, bro.
Let's
I'm
go.
not kidding you. I just hear great things about all of your work, and I'm so proud of you and your work ethic. Something that I do know about you, bro, is that truly you are always either one of or the hardest worker in the room. Like, you take great pride in your work ethic, and I know you take great pride in reminding people how important discipline and self-control in these areas are in life. But recently, dude, you've put that to the test. I mean, you're doing a monthly marathon. Let me say it again. Running a marathon every single month. There are some people, dude, that couldn't even dream of running a marathon, and you're doing 12 in 2024. Bryan, speak to what the experience has been like for you personally thus far. What's the next race, but also what are some of the lessons that you feel like you've learned throughout the challenging, let's just say, months of running?
Yeah, man. And and I was one of those people literally last October, thinking like, oh, I could barely run a marathon, much less do
Right.
one every single month. And I I'm a little bit crazy for it, but it all started where I wanted to create a goal for myself that was so big I didn't think it was possible.
Mm,
And also stretch it out, across 12 months to make it a long-term goal. And what this allowed for me to do, and this is very personal, and I probably don't recommend doing a marathon every month to a lot of people. It's a lot, but it's allowed me to number one have a big, hairy, audacious goal
mm,
that's long-term and allows me to have to show up for myself every single day for the next 12 months to accomplish a goal. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, as soon as I cross that finish line in December for my last race, that I can look back and really be proud of myself, but also know that I've created this self-confidence in myself to
mm.
really go on and take any other goal in the future because I was able to take on this big goal for this amount of time. And so I've learned a lot. It's been a super liberating experience, and
Mm.
you learn a lot about yourself on these longer runs, spending 4 or 5 hours, alone, a lot of times without music, or it's just you in the pavement. You learn a lot about yourself, but it's also very liberating in the fact that all these self-limiting beliefs that I had about myself about being able to do this, they are
Mm.
no longer in my mind, and I am free of those negative beliefs about myself because I've been able to show up for myself for a consistent amount of time. And that's in itself has built within me the self confidence. So
Mm.
that's some of the experience. Some of the lessons really are number one is that your mind is way more powerful than you think.
Mm.
Um, and this can work for you or it can work against you. And
Yeah.
so um, last year I was reading both of David Goggins' book. One's Can't Hurt Me, and I forgot what the title of the other one was, but he put a quote in there, and he says the decision rarely comes down to physical ability. It's almost always a test of how well you can manage your mind. And that quote really resonated with me because there's a lot of times that I'm out there, and for the people that run long distance, they know you hit that wall, and it's like I just don't think that I can run another mile.
Yeah.
And your body is hurting, you're tired, but if you can learn to manage your mind, your body can do incredible feats. And then,
Mm.
two other lessons that I've learned, and then we can go to the next topic is I was listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast, and he is a neuroscientist, and he talks a lot about the brain. And he said there's a part of the brain that basically when you do hard things, it's neuroplastic, if I'm using the correct terminology, but it can
Yep.
grow when you do hard things and it shrinks when you don't do hard things. And this part of your brain is actually responsible for willpower. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, basically, he's alluding to the more hard stuff you do, the more this part of the brain grows, which allows you to have more willpower to continue, that fight in life. And um, on this podcast, he was talking to David Goggins, and they said like when most people go through hard stuff, they rarely want to go back. They feel like
Mm.
they graduated. After you do something hard, you don't want to go back. You feel like you graduate. And I feel like with the case with these marathons is that I did the hard. I've done the hard 7 times already this year,
Yeah.
but I want to go back,
Come on.
and I want to go back because I feel like that's not only increasing my willpower, but the will to live. And so
Mm.
um, it's just a great lesson that I've learned. And the last is a little bit more practical is like practice makes progress. And
Yes.
that's for life, that's for business, that's for running. It's like whatever you do, if you can just do it long enough, there becomes a point where it's just unreasonable for you not to get good.
Mm.
And I think it's just so important that and I struggle with this for myself, like, chasing after the shiny objects. But if you can just stay focused on one goal and do it for long enough, there's literally a very slim chance that you don't become good at it. And so practice makes progress.
Man, dude, those are great and invaluable lessons. You're talking about the process of neuroplasticity, like you said, that the brain has the opportunity of rewiring over time. And I love how you said you have to be, in a sense, in control of your thoughts and control of your brain. You know, I'm never been a big runner, but recently I've gotten into running quite a bit because, right, your trickle effect, bro. You've been pouring into Jeremiah. Jeremiah's been pouring into me. So I've been out there running, right? And I would never identify myself as a runner probably 6-7 months ago. But in the last 6 to 7 months, as I go run on a daily basis now, I put in earbuds. I don't listen to music. I listen to motivational podcasts. I listen to sermons, all of those things. I was listening to Goggins recently, and I love what he said. He said there's a lot of people who, when the alarm clock goes off, right, early in the morning when it's still dark outside, they're just going to go ahead and click snooze because that's what they're used to. But he said it's not until we make that decision, when we tell our mind what to do, that's not what we do anymore, right? This is who we are. When we begin identifying with those things, that's what matters most. So now, man, I'm a runner, right? And that's the mindset that I'm telling my body each and every day, because that's what matters. There's a sermon series that I've been listening to as well recently by Craig Rochelle. It's also the same title of one of his newest books called The Power to Change. And he begins it all with saying, you know what? Real change, right, is not produced by hope. Hope's a great thing. At the end of the day, right, we need that expectation. But hope doesn't produce change. Habits do. The problem, though, Bryan, is that a lot of our listeners and viewers today, like us in years past, we have uphill hopes, but we have downhill habits. You have clearly gone through a pruning process, a discipline process of transformation, not just physically, right? You're freaking shredded. You got the Greek god body, for goodness sakes, but also you've been really trying to process the whole holistic health aspect, the mental and emotional, the relational, the spiritual components of discipline. I want to ask you this. In knowing that in order to experience elevation, we have to first go through the process of elimination and incorporation, what are some of the habits that you have learned to incorporate in your life to help you in that transformative process every day?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question because habits really form who you are.
Yeah.
And I think I read one quote or statistic, and it might have actually been by Craig, that 40% of what we do is habits. And
Yep.
I would argue that's probably even more than
Yeah.
40%. And so it's important to, on a fundamental basis, create the habits that you want for your future self. And so
Mm.
I had to really take a step back, and a lot of times, and I talk to a lot of people about this, is that we get so short term and narrow minded that it's hard for us to really look into the future. Like everybody's always like, what's your 5 or 10 year plans? But like actually understanding like who you want to be in the long term. And it's just so far, like time is a very funny thing, and it's
Yeah.
hard to kind of grasp our mind around long term time. Like eternity is impossible to wrap my mind around, but even like 10, 20
Yeah.
years. And so for me, I had to really understand who that man was in 5, 10, 15, 20 years that I wanted to become. And that's a God-fearing man who has physical, spiritual, emotional fitness, the
Mm.
protector and the provider of my family. And so I had to reverse engineer the habits that guy had and implement them in my life today in order to set myself up on the correct journey to becoming that man. And so I have a lot of habits now. There's this great author, James Clear. He writes the
Yep.
book Atomic Habits. And I've read this book twice, actually. And, he talks about habit stacking, and I won't get into the nitty gritty of it. But when it comes down to habits, I really just kind of break it down into, 3, maybe 4 categories. And that's habits around your mind, habits around
Mm.
your body, and habits around your soul. And so for me, some of the habits that I have is like, okay, around my body. So, movement, exercise, eating healthy, things of that
Mm.
nature. Around the mind, reading, podcasts, studying, right? Just habits around growing my mind, and then the soul or spiritual habits is praying, going to church, reading your Bible, getting into Bible studies, and so just implementing these habits can really help change the trajectory of your life. And a common rule that I practice is the 80-20 rule. And
Yep.
I have a hard time because I'm about 100-0 kind of guy. It's like all or nothing. And
Yes.
That's just kind of my personality, but for the most people, it's like 80% of the time do what you know you need to do, and the 20% of the time enjoy that balance and that life offers us.
Man, I think that's an incredible way to approach life. And clearly, those habits, they mean so much to us because at the end of the day, discipline is one of the greatest forms of self-love, right? What you do today is truly investing in who you'll become tomorrow. And so those habits mean more than we could ever know, think, or imagine. Topic of our conversation clearly has all been around this idea of discipline thus far. I actually read a quote from you several years back that discipline will take you places motivation never could, Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to share, though, motivation's a fine thing, right? It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's important to be motivated. It's important to listen to the podcast, read the quotes, different things like that. But what is the differentiating factor, do you think, between discipline and motivation? And why does discipline always trump motivation and desire at the end of the day?
Yeah, great question. And let me back up to the habits. I wrote this
Yeah.
quote from James Clear. He says, "A habit missed once is a mistake. A habit
Mm.
missed twice is a new habit." So just a little food for thought. You can habit stack the right way or the wrong way. But to get back into your point of discipline versus motivation, yeah, it's simple. Motivation is here today and gone tomorrow. And as you said, discipline is one of the highest, if not the highest, forms of self-love. I think motivation is extremely important. It's what gets us going. It's what gets us started. It's what gets us excited. But discipline is what's going to carry us on throughout that journey. And really, like, discipline is just ignoring something that you want right now for something better later on. I'll give you another definition. Discipline reveals the commitment you have to your dreams, especially on days you don't want to.
Mm.
I'll give you one more. The future you is depending on the current you to keep the promises you made to yourself yesterday. And so, the common trait here around discipline is just the sacrifice of the wanting of right now for something better in the future. And I think it's so important that we take the time to learn discipline and to build the discipline, because at the end of the day, the only thing different between someone great, successful, that person that you want to be and where you are now is discipline and being able to do the things that they know they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do them, despite how they feel about doing them. And
Mm.
so I think it's just extremely important, to have the discipline to take you to where you want to go.
It's all built around that idea. Don't trade what you want most for what you feel like you want now. Denzel Washington has that quote, without commitment, you'll never start, but more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. It's the motivation part, like, it's easy to get started. It's easy on day one, Bryan, right? When I show up at the gym and January 1st rolls around, I got the New Year's resolution to lose 15 pounds or so, to eat healthier. It's easy. But come about the second Friday in the month of January, guess what? 50% of all resolutions are out the window. 90% of individuals that have resolutions going into a new year fail at them, right? So motivation, it's easy to get started, but it's hard to keep going. Bryan, for you, you're serving in that personal training space as a coach, someone who walks alongside of individuals from a holistic health standpoint. What are you seeing as some of the biggest barriers or roadblocks as to why people are not actually meeting their goals when it comes to resolutions and when it comes to becoming more disciplined in life?
Absolutely. And I'll kind of piggyback off of what you just said is like, it's easy to make these decisions when we're comfortable. Like,
Right.
I'm going to go run 12 marathons in 12 months. I probably did that when I was laying in my bed in the AC under the covers, tucked in nice and tight, right?
Yeah.
But that motivation quickly faded. And so now it's just the discipline that gets me up every morning to put one foot in front of the other. And so, to answer your question about barriers to discipline, I think really the main two are, number one is like people's environment.
Hmm.
I think the people that you surround yourself with, or the environment, the things you do, the places you do them, and the people you do them with, has a very big impact on who you are as a person, which ultimately boils down to the disciplines that you have in life. And I think if you surround yourself with people who are undisciplined or who celebrate your mediocrity, then it's going to be very hard to be disciplined, because they're going to look at you and be like, why they're judging you for being disciplined. So number one is people's environment. Number two, I think, is people's mindsets. I think that a lot of people don't feel worthy enough to experience the benefits of discipline, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in fitness in itself. It's like number one, you have to feel like you deserve to be healthy. If you don't feel like you deserve to be healthy, you're never going to get there. And so I think it goes hand in hand with discipline as well.
I like that, your environment and your mindset, right? They can actually hinder or they can actually heighten, in a sense, your amount of discipline in life. And I love what you said when it comes to the mindset aspect. John Maxwell, he has a quote that says, the higher you go, the higher the price. And then he talks about a lot of people in life, they don't underachieve or they don't not reach their goals because they didn't have the time or they didn't have the effort or the talent or the abilities. They typically don't reach their goals because they were unwilling to pay a different price, right? It's going to cost you something. Anything worth value in life is going to come at a cost. It may cost you time. It may cost you effort. It may cost you friends. It may cost you all of these things. But if it means something to you, again, discipline is the greatest form of self-love. Keep investing in yourself. Take the initiative. Make sure that you're being intentional about those processes in your life. But you mentioned the environment aspect, and I want to tie this in for a second because one of your pillars is accountability. And I do see this all the time. When I got out of college baseball, right, where I was working out in that team environment, I had a coach telling me what to do, pouring into me, and I was in a sense on my own then, Bryan. I struggled with trying to get back in the gym. I struggled with, let's just say the discipline aspects of my life because there is strength in numbers. Sometimes it makes it a lot easier when you're going on a run with somebody. It makes it a lot easier when you're training with somebody, when you're doing a Bible study, going to church, community. Those things matter. So speak to the significance of your inner circle and how those individuals have poured into and invested in your life and why you want to drive home that facet one more time in a current of loneliness, why it's important for all of our listeners and viewers to have people not just that will surround them, but people that will support and sharpen them as well.
Yeah, I mean, community is everything, dude. And I mean, that famous quote, you are the sum of the top 5 people you hang around, could not be more true. And I've experienced this on the low end and on the high end. I mean, we're made for relationships and for community with one another, and strength is in numbers. And there's just so much important to us. I mean, as humans, we're inherently lazy, to be honest with you. And so there's just so much importance in having that accountability and community around you. And I think it's even more beneficial. It's like with my fitness clients, our community, we're all on the same mission, right? Come from different backgrounds, but all on the same mission. And so when you see your brothers and sisters all fighting to the same common goal, and this goes in just the fitness, but also in life too, as Christians, we're fighting, on the same common goal. We do this as a collective, which we call the church. But in fitness as well, it's just having the community is just fighting towards this one common goal. And it's it's like when tug of war, you're playing tug of war, if you guys are all on the same team pulling at the same time, you got a lot more power. And so I think there's just a lot of benefits in that in the accountability space, just to have brothers and sisters to lean on.
And I think it's important to do a level of self-examination to really reflect on, hey, are the people that I'm surrounding myself with, are they pushing me closer toward, or are they pulling me further away from those goals in life? Because as Andy Andrews would say, if you start to recognize that, hey, you know what, maybe I'm just seeking community for comfort and for validation and affirmation rather than also seeking it for teaching and correction, maybe it's time we move past the, well, at least they accept me for who I am crowd, right? Find people, again, that will not just support, but also people that will sharpen you and take you places within yourself that you couldn't go by yourself. So you talked about environment. You talked about mindset being, in a sense, hindrances from allowing us to experience the disciplined life. And I wanted to touch on one more with you today, which was the idea of purpose. I was interviewing a guy named Garrett Unkelbach, who is a Navy SEAL. He served on the same SEAL team as Jocko. Everybody knows Jocko's podcast. And as Garrett was telling me, when he has Seal by his name, everybody automatically says, oh, bro, you got to be one of the most disciplined individuals on the face of the planet. So he always has these opportunities to speak on this topic. And I remember him telling me, you know what, Zach, as I speak on the topic and the more I've been able to reflect on it, I realize that in culture and society today, it's not that we have a discipline problem, it's that we have a purpose problem. He says, when I speak into men, I look at men and I say, hey, if I told you had to wake up at 2 a.m. and you had to run a marathon tomorrow, I don't care what shape you're in, but I told you that if you didn't, your wife or your children are going to have harm happen to their lives, you wouldn't sleep a wink and you would run 26.2 and probably until your body gave out, right? It's not a discipline problem. It's a purpose problem. Sometimes we just don't have a why for or a who for that's bigger than us. Bryan, speak to the importance of purpose and why you believe ultimately that is what is going to drive people to make their health a significant aspect of their life, not as a reactive process, but more so as a proactive one.
Absolutely, and I can really speak to this just from my personal experiences, and I'm no Navy SEAL, so my experience with purpose is a little bit different. But I love the point that he made, and I'll tie into that in a minute. But yeah, purpose is everything, and I always this is my little quote, and it's change won't happen until the pain of your current situation becomes greater than the pleasure that you get from it. And so this was my case. I was in LA living a suboptimal life, let's just put it that way. And it really got, to save you some of the details, it got down to the point where I was just addicted. I was lost. I was lonely. I was, felt unworthy, just in a deep, dark hole. And it really got to the point to where if I didn't change my situation, this is becoming a life or death thing. And so it wasn't really, to be completely honest with you, until the pain of that situation that I was currently in became greater than the pleasure that I was enjoying from that lifestyle. And once that pain threshold went over, I was like, change has got to happen or I can't take this anymore. And so I think that goes into the purpose piece because, for example, when I hop on to these sales calls with people that say, hey, I want to lose some weight. What does your program look like? I always ask them, but why? They're like, oh, I just want to lose a few pounds, but why? And the reason that I'm doing this, I'm really digging, but why? No, tell me more. Oh, because, I want to take my shirt off, but why? Oh, so I can go to the pool with my family, but why? And just digging and digging and digging. And it's like, okay, so you want to lose 10 pounds so you can take your shirt off, so you can feel confident around your wife who hasn't touched you in 10 years, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so now we have the purpose of really why you are showing up and want to lose 10 pounds. Because if you just tell me you want to lose 10 pounds, the moment that life happens and you get busy or that muffin you see sitting in the corner appears, I don't want to lose 10 pounds isn't enough purpose or reason to change. And so, one thing I heard a quote or somebody said the other day is everybody says that they love their family and they would do anything for your family. I would die for my family, but would you get healthy for them? Would you get fit for them? And so I think it's really dive in and figure out what our purpose is for the reason that we want to change. And I know we're talking a lot around fitness, but this goes into life as well. It's what is your purpose? Because if you don't have a clear purpose in life, it's going to be very easy to deviate, whether that's through distractions or lack of motivation or whatever curveball comes your way. If you don't have that deep founding purpose in your life, there's no way you're going to stay on the straight and narrow.
Something I always try to remind people of, just like you're saying, Bryan, is if you don't have a purpose that's greater than you, then the problem is that you'll try to make it all about you. And when we try to make things about us, guess what? We'll let ourselves down a majority of the time. But we have to remember that he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. That's the wise words of Viktor Frankl, right? We have to have a purpose that is ultimately going to be greater than us. And I'm so grateful you brought up already the spiritual components of that, the mental and emotional components of that. What I want to do here for a second, though, is we've talked a lot about the problem, right? Living in a very undisciplined culture and society, some of the barriers, some of the reasons as to why. You've given us a greater awareness and an enhancement of an understanding understanding of what discipline looks like. But for the person out there today who maybe just feels weary, feels like, you know what, I'm not exactly sure how to begin this disciplined life. Like, what's the first step I should take? What would you offer that person in this moment as, hey, this is just one or two things that you can begin doing to discipline yourself, no matter what that comes in life, no matter what that is, fitness, whether that's in the mental health standpoint, whether that is their spiritual life growth and discipleship. What can they do in this moment today to begin living a more disciplined life?
Yeah, great question. I'll give you three. And I'm going to keep this super simple that most anybody can do, okay? Is number one is start your mornings with prayer and quiet time.
Yeah.
Whether you're religious or not, even just taking the 10 to 20 minutes if you want to meditate. I like to do mine with prayer and quiet time. It just sets the rest of your day up to be so much better. And everybody can do that. It's just 10 minutes. And if you're always rushing, this is even more important for you. If you feel like you're always rushing through the day and don't have time to do anything, this 10 minutes is going to set the rest of your day up to be way more successful. I like to think of it for those that call themselves Christians. It's like, we're called to give 10% of our finances, but I believe we're also called to give, tithe 10% of our time. And so, I like to tithe my 10% of my time in the mornings before I get my day started. And it's just worked absolute wonders in my life. And it's very simple, very practical. Number two, walk more. Walk more. And if you have the ability to walk more. The goal should be 10,000 steps a day. And do what you can to get them in. And it's the most underrated. Walking is the most underrated thing you can do in your fitness, and it's going to yield you more benefits than you'll ever know. And number three, drink more water. Yeah. Just drink more water, a gallon of water a day. Yes, sir. And those are three super easy, super practical that most everybody can do that are drastically going to change your life.
Man, it's incredible to hear you share those things, right? The first one, just be and spend time in the Lord's presence, whether that be through prayer, whether that be through meditation, whether that be through reading God's word, right? Spending time in surrender. The second one, walking more. The third one, drinking water. Let's just say my equation for winning the day, whenever people ask me from a mental health standpoint, from a motivational speaking standpoint, like, how do we win the day? We say that all the time in sports. Let's win the day, fellas. But it's like, well, how does that happen? I always say surrender, suffer, serve, right? Surrender, spending time, surrendering to the Holy Spirit and his leading and his guiding in my life, not just morning by morning, but moment by moment. Number two, suffer, doing something difficult, getting outside of myself, beyond my limits to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to discipline myself even from a physical standpoint, because then when difficult things come in my life, I know that I'm capable and I was made to overcome. The third one is serve, get outside of ourselves and be willing to, in a sense, help somebody else, encourage somebody else, support somebody else, and recognize it's not all about us, right? Making sure that we have that teamwork, because you know why? We can't do this life alone. Why? Because we're not that good, right? We weren't created to be that good. We need other people. Bryan, as we're talking from a spiritual standpoint, a spiritual component, discipline is actually a very good thing. As I've mentioned, it's actually one of the fruits of the Spirit, recognized as self-control. Several times throughout Scripture, God reminds us that discipline is a way in which he shows and he displays his love for us. Hebrews 12:11 says this, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it will produce a harvest of righteousness and peace for those that have been trained by it. Another passage that I've kind of been meditating on a lot here recently in my quiet time. It goes back to that sermon series that I brought up by Craig Rochelle, The Power to Change. And he talks a lot out of Romans chapter 7. And what our listeners and viewers, if they aren't familiar with Romans chapter 7, this is a huge passage in Scripture that so many of us need to be familiar with, because Paul was a person that had experienced an incredible transformation. He was once named Saul. He was persecuting Christians. He had his God moment in the road to Damascus. Now all of a sudden he is, in a sense, a person that the early church was being built upon. But these are his words, because he was in a position where he was living an undisciplined life. He was stuck. He was frustrated. And he said this, I do not understand my actions. Then to paraphrase his next quotes, he says, why do I do the things I wish I wouldn't, and I don't do the things that I wish that I would? wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? And he answers that question, thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ our Lord. In my quiet time, I've been reflecting. He didn't ask the question, what will deliver me from this body of death? Or how hard can I work to deliver myself from this body of death? He asked that question, who? Bryan, as you bring up your faith, just being a foundation for you in living and walking out this disciplined life, speak to the importance of what that personal relationship with Christ has meant to you.
Yeah, I mean, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And, when I found myself at rock bottom, it was not what I did or how I did it, but who I surrendered to that allowed me to live a prosperous life. And it's not always going to be easy, but it's always going to be worth it, to do so in accordance to the Lord's will and following his plan for your life. And it just gives me so much great peace, knowing that I don't have to do this alone, that I have the Almighty God in my corner fighting my battles for me. And that just gives me a peace to walk with my head up and chest out, that I got the dopest Father on my side, creating a beautiful life for me. So something else I want to allude to is I visited a new church here in Houston on Sunday. It's called Blueprint. I'm going to shout them out, Blueprint Church.
Nice.
They're a young church. I think they said they've been open for about 7 months. And their verse of the year is Ephesians 3:20, which reads, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us." And I think that's just a powerful message to myself and to the listeners that God has a plan for us bigger and better than anything that we can imagine. And so I pray that we just trust in that and find hope and purpose in that and keep it moving.
And the beautiful thing about God is that his love, his grace, his mercy, and his forgiveness is something that we could never earn because he doesn't ask us to, right? We've talked a lot about discipline today, working hard, self-control, but we have to remember that God isn't just interested in us because of our behavior. He's interested in us ultimately because of our belief in him. And when we recognize that God loved us so much, right, that he was willing to literally die a death in our place, man, that's where true love ultimately comes from. So when we're talking about discipline and these things, yes, they matter because they help us live and actually grow in that abundant life for which we are created. There was a quote by Donald Whitney in his book Spiritual Disciplines where he says, who we become will always be more important than what we do. But then he went on to say, but what we do will always heavily influence who we become. So these things go hand in hand. We have to recognize it's our belief and it is ultimately our expression, the forgiveness of those sins that allows us the opportunity to be sons and daughters of God, spending eternity in his presence. But while we're here on this earth, let's bring heaven to earth through the way that we live our lives, through the thoughts that we think, through the words that we say, and let's be a more disciplined people. Bryan, as we wrap up our conversation, something that I love to do on the podcast is just by allowing our guests to share a pressing word that God has placed on their heart for such a time as this. And so for you, my friend, to the person out there today who maybe feels discouraged, disappointed, deflated, almost to the point of feeling defeated, they feel like they're the most undisciplined person watching or listening today. What's one final word of hope, encouragement, and motivation that you would give them that would hopefully spark within them a life that looks built different?
Yeah. I would just say don't miss the unbelievable because you only look for what is believable. So you're worthy of it. You're enough. I'm proud of you. I love you. Just keep going, okay? Don't miss the unbelievable because you're only looking for what's believable. God's got some unbelievable plans for you, and I'm excited to watch them unfold.
You're worth investing in yourself, my friend. Make sure that you take that first step today. Bryan, brother, where can they go to find out more about you, but also to be just involved in your resources, and where can they get coached by you?
Yeah. Bryan Pollard Fitness. That's BRYAN POLLARD Fitness. Bryan Pollard Fitness. That's gonna be me pretty much across the board. But Instagram is probably the best way to um, find me. And if you just mention this podcast or Zach in any manner, I'm happy to throw you some freebies in there or a discount or something like that. So yeah, looking forward to anyone who wants to improve their life. Let's get better together.
That's right. You guys, be sure to take advantage of those opportunities that Bryan is saying. Reach out to him. He will get you right, not just physically, but holistically as well. Bryan, my friend, what a blessing it is, man, just again to reconnect with you. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm encouraged by you each and every day. Keep doing
Likewise.
the amazing things that you're doing and keep letting God do his work in and through your life. Love you, brother.
Love you, man. Appreciate you.